Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Philadelphia Assemblies. My name is Jon Zaghloul. Great to be back here with all of you, doing our best to teach the uncut word of Elohim, the word of Yahuwah, myself, Pastor Bob Barr, and Eric Burkholz. We all contribute to this channel. If you like what you hear, subscribe to the channel. We're not perfect, but we're doing our best. We hope we continue to provide you with some good and fruitful lessons for all of you to take home and enjoy. Today's lesson is a bit personal for me. I'll explain why later. The title is going to be You Can't Worship God, Yahuwah, and Money. You can't worship God, Yahuwah, and money. Now, the inspiration for this lesson is twofold. I have a personal testimony, which I'll get to near the end, but the number one reason and how this all kind of came about was me rereading the book of Job. I haven't read it since I became Torah pursuant or Torah observant. I found two verses in Job, two passages in Job, that unbelievably compare to words that yahusha said in Matthew. I want to read all four of those for you now and have you ruminate on them. Job 27, 8 through 9. For what is the hope of the hypocrite, though he has gained, when Elohim takes away his soul? Or will El hear his cry when trouble comes upon him? Matthew 16, 26. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? What shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Wow. Talk about similarities. By the way, in that Job verse, for what is the hope of the hypocrite, though he has gained, when Elohim takes away his soul? Here's the question to end that. This is a verse. Will El hear his cry when trouble comes upon him? It's a rhetorical question. The answer is no. If you've decided to sell your soul, putting money above everything else, legitimately selling your soul, which is a whole different conversation, he's not going to hear your cry when you call out unto him. Although that's an unpopular belief, a lot of churches don't preach it. The once saved, always saved doctrine doesn't support it. Unfortunately, it's true. If you put all of your trust in money, in riches, in worldly possessions, and if you physically sell your soul for money, good luck trying to get back to Yahuwah. It's not going to work. That's why, will El hear his cry when trouble comes upon him? The answer is no. But see how similar those verses in Job were to Yahusha's in Matthew. I have more too. Job 27, 16 through 17. Now, these two verses, keep this in mind, are referring to the portion of a wicked man with El. This is what a wicked man with El will receive. And that's per Job 27, 13. Though he heap up silver as the dust and prepare raiment as the clay, he may prepare it, but the just shall put it on, and the innocent shall divide the silver. Matthew 6, 19 through 21. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon this earth, where moth and rust do corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust do corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Again in Job it says, if there's a wicked man, a lawless man, an antinomian man, a man who hates the Torah, if he heaps up silver as the dust and prepare raiment as the clay, he'll prepare it, for sure, but the just shall put it on, and the innocent shall divide the silver. I think Yahusha is quoting all of this from Job. Think about Job for a minute, too. He was wealthy, but he lost everything and still clung to Yahuwah throughout. Never failed, never ended. It wasn't a sin for Job to have all that wealth. He was favored. He loved Yahuwah. He loved his righteousness. He loved his commandments. He loved his Torah. He was favored. He received wealth. Of course, he was grateful for it, but he didn't worship it. He worshiped Yahuwah. It isn't a sin to have wealth, but it becomes a serious sin when we worship money or wealth and hold it in high regard, a higher regard than Yahuwah. When Job lost his wealth, he was still considered righteous unto Yahuwah because he never sinned with his lips. That's per Job 122 and 210. He lost all of his wealth, but he didn't idolize it, and he never sinned with his lips. If we make money our God or our little e Elohim, our heart will be focused on the love of money, not on the love of Yahuwah. There's a lot in there about Job and about what happened to him. He didn't lose his money because he worshipped his money. He lost it due to other reasons outlined in the book. And he ended up getting twofold back at the end of the day because he stayed faithful to Yahuwah. He never abandoned Yahuwah. Even when he was reduced to nothing and he had nothing and his health was gone, his family was gone, his wife abandoned him, he stayed true to Yahuwah. He never lost his faith in Yahuwah. And everything was given back unto him twofold, all the riches, all the wealth. And that doesn't mean I'm saying that, oh, if you believe in Yahuwah, you're going to get rich. That's not what I mean. But you will receive favor if you do your best to walk in the way in which he wants you to walk and have the testimony of Yahusha HaMashiach. I can guarantee you that. More verses here on the love of money over the love of Yahuwah. Matthew 6:24, no one is able to serve two masters, for either he shall hate the one and love the other, or else he shall cleave to the one and despise the other. You are not able to serve Elohim and mammon. Hebrews 13:5-6, this one's really good via Paul. Let your way of life be without the love of silver, and be satisfied with what you have. For he himself has said, quote, I shall never leave you nor forsake you, end quote, Deuteronomy 31:6, quoting Deuteronomy, so that we will boldly say, quote again, Yahuwah is my helper. I shall not fear what man shall do to me. Psalm 118:6. For those who continue to beat on the drum of Paul's apostle, I ask you to look at this. He continues to quote the Old Testament even in this passage right here. Let your way of life be without the love of silver, and be satisfied with what you have. For he himself has said, I shall never leave you nor forsake you, which is true, so that we boldly say, Yahuwah is my helper. I shall not fear what man shall do to me. Correct. Great quote there. Great verses from Paul. Proverbs 16:22, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, his grandchildren. But the wealth of the sinner is stored up for the righteous. The wealth of the lawless will be stored up for the lawful. Now, could that mean physical and legitimate wealth? Yes, but it also means wealth in terms of heaven, in terms of the Shamayim. So at the end of the day, the table will be reversed. You could have $1 billion right now and hate Yahuwah. And at the end of the day, that wealth, quote unquote, metaphorically speaking, figuratively speaking, is going to be transferred away from the rich man who is rich in terms of numbers. It's going to be transferred to the poor man, the meek man, the humble one, just the one who worships and loves Yahuwah more. That's how that's going to go. Ecclesiastes 5:10, he who loves silver is not satisfied with silver, nor he who loves wealth and increase, that too is futile. And this is very powerful. He who loves silver is not satisfied with silver, nor he who loves wealth and increase, that too is futile. You could have $100 billion of silver bars in your pocket, in your safe, wherever you put it, and that won't be enough. Isn't that so true? Such wisdom here in Ecclesiastes. Because when you have 100, you want 200. When you have 500, you want 1 billion. When you have 1 billion, you want 1 trillion. It's never enough. And if that's you, right, if you're somebody who loves silver so much over Yahuwah, you're never going to be satisfied with it. Same with wealth and increase. If you love wealth so much, if you love your wealth so much more than Yahuwah, you're never going to be satisfied. You're always going to be looking for more, wanting to earn more. Entrepreneurship, right? All these things that are really becoming viral online for sure are all these people who are trying day after day to chase that next buck. And I'm here to tell you, it's not worth it. Proverbs 11:28, he who trusts in his riches falls, but the righteous flourish like a leaf. Ezekiel 7:19, this is really good. They throw their silver into the streets, and their gold becomes as filth. Their silver and their gold is unable to deliver them in the day of the wrath of Yahuwah. They do not satisfy their appetite nor fill their stomachs, because it has been their stumbling block of lawlessness, of crookedness. What's it say? Their silver and their gold is unable to deliver them or save them in the day of the wrath of Yahuwah. Yahuwah does not care how much silver or gold you have. He cares about how much you love him. And for those out there who think that they're rich enough to avoid Yahuwah, which I can't believe that's even a thought, but it is a thought. We see it out there in society today. You're going to be sorely mistaken. He's not a respecter of persons, and he doesn't care how much money you have. He cares about where your heart is with him. And 1 Timothy 6:10, for the love of silver or money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some, by longing for it, have strayed from the belief and pierced themselves through with many pains. You're going to pierce yourself with many pains. Self-inflict yourself with a wound for chasing after money and loving it more than Yahuwah. I know I've painted a grim picture. I think I've made my point. But here's the other part of this lesson, and the other part of the question. What should we do with riches? What if we're Baruch from Yahuwah? Seriously, and we're given so much wealth. And we're given the opportunity to make a difference. What should we do with it? Number one, be generous. via 1 Timothy 6:17 through 19. Charge those who are rich in this present age not to be high-minded. Don't be high-minded, nor to trust in the uncertainty of riches, but in the living Elohim, who gives us richly all for enjoyment, to do good, to be rich in good works, to be generous, ready to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come, so that they lay hold on everlasting life. Be generous. And ask those who are rich. If you're rich, if you know somebody who's rich, ask them, charge them. Don't be high-minded. Don't exalt yourself. Continue to stay humble. And don't trust in those riches that you've been given. Trust in Elohim. So what should we do with riches? Here's number 2. Remember Yahuwah. Remember who gave them to you. Deuteronomy 8:18. But you shall remember Yahuwah your Elohim, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth in order to establish his covenant with which he swore to your fathers as it is today. If you're baruched with riches, amazing. Praise Yahuwah. And remember that he gave them to you and thank him for it daily. I would. Thank him for it daily. Thank you, Father Yahuwah, for providing me with this and help me to make a difference with it. Remember who gave it to you. Deuteronomy 8:18. That's a great verse to show to people who've encountered wealth, who are believers, or anybody for that matter, who's encountered wealth, I would hope in a moral sense. Tell them, remember who gave it to you. Yahuwah did. Number 3, don't worry. Matthew 6:25 through 34, which I'm sure many of you know. Because of this I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you shall eat or drink, or about your body, what you put on. Is not life more than the food, and the body more than the clothing? Look at the birds of the heaven, or the shamayim, for they neither sow nor reap, nor gather into storehouses, yet your heavenly Father does feed them. Are you not worth more than they? And which of you by worrying is able to add 1 cubit to his lifespan? So why do you worry about clothing? Note well that the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And I say to you that even Shlomo, Solomon, in all his esteem, was not dressed like one of these. But if Elohim so clothes the grass of the field, which exists today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, how much more are you, O you of little belief? Do not worry then, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For all these the nations seek for, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But seek first the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these shall be added unto you. Do not then worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow shall have its own worries. Each day has enough evil of itself. So what's it say? But first seek the reign of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these shall be added unto you. He will provide food, water, and clothing for you. If the first thing you do is seek the reign of Elohim and his righteousness. So here's the big question. What is his righteousness? Psalm 119, 142. Thy righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and thy law, or Torah, is the truth. Seek a life that upholds his law, and you will be okay. One more thing to share too before we finish up. This lesson is personal. I mentioned personal testimony time, very brief. I recently had a job situation personally in which I was offered an opportunity that would have paid me more money than what I was making currently, but it would have been a lot more work, and frankly, I think it would have become an idol in my life. Not even because I loved it or I wanted it to be, but because it would have been unbelievably demanding. And I was faced with a tough decision. Do I stay where I'm at and essentially keep the pay that I'm at? Or do I go after this job because it's going to pay me a lot more money and I'm excited about it? So I prayed to Yahuwah. I heard the verse about do not worship, right? You can't worship 2 masters. You can't worship Yahuwah and mammon. I heard that verse on 2 different videos that I was watching in the same week, days apart. And both videos had nothing to do with money. They didn't. They had to do with other topics, and those verses just came up. I thought Yahuwah was speaking to me, and I think he was. So I came to the conclusion mentally, you know what? I don't need this new job with all this money. I don't need to worry about it. I'm happy where I'm at. Well, I ended up going that route, and at the end of the day, I got promoted anyway. At the current job I was at, and they almost matched the salary that I turned down, which would have come with, yes, more money, but much more labor and much more hours put in. Instead, my current job's increased very little, and I'm making almost the same that I would have been. And Yahuwah is going to listen to you. When you're faced with a tough decision, pray to him and he will guide you in the right path. Back then, when all this occurred, I wanted to do a lesson, but I wanted to wait, wanted to give it some time. Then when I saw these verses this week, the things that parallel Job and yahusha, I said, okay, I got to do it now. Don't worship money. It's hard in this world. It's hard in this country. It's hard when you look at the standards of social media and what people tell you, but you don't need to be working 100-hour weeks just to do it because you think you have to for whatever reason. It doesn't matter. Honor the Sabbath day. Find a job that allows you to honor the Sabbath and take time off. That's a great start. And find work, if you need to work, that is not going to interrupt your walk. There are jobs out there that will do it. Pray to Yahuwah and have him help you. And if you are in the position in which you have a ton of money, that's amazing. Good for you. Yahuwah has obviously baruched you. Do something impactful with it. Don't be a miser. Listen to what Yahuwah says through his word. Be generous with it. Help people with it. Help people who need help with it. As it said in Proverbs, right? Things are going to change down the road. The riches are not going to save people on the day of the wrath of Yahuwah per Ezekiel. It won't. We can't be trusting in riches. We have to trust in Yahuwah. And if we do, he will provide, as yahusha says. Let's just seek his reign and his righteousness. And what's his righteousness? His law, his Torah. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. So long.